Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on the three-day Asian tour by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi that is still ongoing and concluding today. And joining us here in the studio to shed more light on this issue is Dr. Ali Masoud, the Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Political Science at Beni Suef University. We're also joined by Ambassador Farghaly Taha, former Assistant Foreign Minister, and he was actually the former Deputy Head of the mission to Uzbekistan. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Asian tour, the three-day Asian tour that took President al-Sisi to three stops, Bahrain, China, and Uzbekistan. Now, the President attended the forum on the China-African cooperation yesterday in Beijing, and earlier today he arrived to Uzbekistan. It is the first official visit by the Egyptian president to Uzbekistan. We're going to be focusing more on this issue in tonight's show. But before we start, let's check out this report regarding President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's three-day Asian tour, enhancing the Egyptian ties with China, and we'll be right back.
Continuing his Asian tour, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi pays an official two-day visit to Uzbekistan at the invitation of Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. During the high-level summit, the two leaders will discuss prospective areas of developing bilateral ties and cooperation and exchanging views on current international and regional issues. Following the negotiations, it is expected to adopt a joint statement of the heads of states and sign intergovernmental and interdepartmental documents on strengthening and expanding cooperation between Uzbekistan and Egypt in political, trade, economic spheres, in tourism, science, education, culture and sports. Earlier in China, President al-Sisi, along with the presidents and heads of government across Africa, attended the forum of the China-Africa cooperation, which aims to increase diplomatic and economic ties between Beijing and the Black Continent. Earlier, President Sisi held talks with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Sisi hailed the development of the historic ties binding Egypt and China, describing them as a comprehensive strategic partnership. The Chinese president praised the development of bilateral relations between the two countries to the level of comprehensive strategic partnership. Meanwhile, President al-Sisi attended the signing of a number of agreements and contracts with a number of Chinese companies to implement projects worth $18.3 billion in Egypt. President al-Sisi underscored Egypt's keenness on promoting cooperation with China in various fields, particularly economic, cultural, tourism and scientific ones, to make the best use of the Chinese side's expertise. He said Egypt and China play a pioneering role in peace, security and development in the African and international levels. President Sisi and his Chinese counterpart witnessed the signing of the 5 cooperation deals in various fields as part of the Egyptian leader's visit to Beijing. The deals tackle several domains, including the industrial quality, Chinese loan and cooperation in projects such as the electrical train, along with the grant for manufacturing and Egyptian satellites. President Sisi met with Chinese officials and business CEOs as well as African leaders and visited the Communist Party Academy, as well as witnessed the signing of the major economic deals. The President also met with the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to review the Egyptian-Ethiopian relations and the recent developments in the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The two sides stressed their determination to reach an agreement regarding the construction of the dam. Also, President Sisi met with the Somali President Mohammed Abdullahi Mohammed, reviewing recent developments in Somalia and bilateral economic relations. Also, the president met with his Sudanese counterpart Omar al-Bashir, where they discussed the Egyptian-Sudanese relations as well as various crises in the Middle East.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Starting off our discussion right away. Dr. Masoud, before we delve into the details of this three-day tour, now this is a three-leg Asian tour that took the president to Bahrain, China and Uzbekistan. What is the significance and the importance of actually Egypt trying to boost its ties with these Asian countries?
Well, first of all, let me emphasize that since President Sisi came into the power, he is trying to make the foreign policy, the Egyptian foreign policy, to be based on partnership. It is not about dependency or independence or whatever. It is about partnership with other countries. This tour, it is extremely important. Why? When you talk about China, for instance, when you talk about China, you are talking about a country in the first Arab and African country that has a diplomatic relation with China was Egypt in 1956. So we have a long history of diplomatic relation with China.
Mm-hmm.
China is coming to play a very important role, not only in economic sense, also it has a very big role now in terms of having a big voice and loud voice as a member, a permanent member in the Security Council.
Mm-hmm.
But still, lots of potential that we really have to work very hard in order to gain from this relation. In terms of Bahrain, for sure, when you talk about the Iranian extension there and expansion in this part of the region, we have to, and the special case in Bahrain, that when you talk, we have to have this direct coordination with a specific country in this Gulf area, especially in dealing with the issue of fighting terrorism. And not only fighting terrorism, also facing the expansion of the Iranian influence there. So, so we are extending our region. When you talk about Uzbekistan, I'm not going to talk a lot about it. I'm going to let it to Mr. Ambassador, actually. But I was very happy to know, actually, this is the first Egyptian president to visit Uzbekistan, which means what? Which means that Egypt is going everywhere in the world to partnership with other countries, regardless, you know, to what extent this country is big, large, small, whatever, we are there. Our very big experience in diplomatic experience is there, and we are looking forward to gain from all deep experience in diplomatic areas and the Foreign Affairs Ministry, actually.
Definitely. And talking about diplomatic experience, Ambassador Taha, you, Your Excellency, you were the head of the mission of the embassy in Uzbekistan. And a lot of people know about the history of the relationship between Egypt and Uzbekistan. So you are the perfect person, the perfect guest to actually shed light on the historical ties and the historical relationship between both countries before we delve into the prospects and what both countries would aspire for in boosting the relationship. Can you shed light on the history of the relationship between both countries?
Of course, Uzbekistan is one of 5 Central Asian countries. Sometimes we call them Islamic Central Asian countries, but they don't like to be named as Islamic. Not because they hate that or because they are not good Muslims. They are good Muslims, and but they want to be looked at as civilized nations, open nations for all races and cultures. So they have very much affinity to the Arab and Muslim world. They are peaceful people. All of the 5 Central Asian countries, including Uzbekistan, they have been deprived too much from practicing their religion during the era of the communism and Soviet Union, to the extent that you cannot find any paper or a book written in Arabic in any house of the Uzbek people or Kazakh people or Turkmen people. It was criminalized at that time. Now everything is better. They are open to the whole world. The Uzbek people, especially, I lived among them for 4 years. They like very much the Egyptian people, our culture. They communicate with us. They have students, a lot of students here, hundreds of students in Al Azhar University. They are connected morally to us. Apart from the historic relation between the Central Asian countries to the Arab and Arab world especially. For example, you have Uzbekistan have about 5 Muslim scientists, Al-Bukhari, Al-Bayruni, Khwarizmi, a lot of Al-Nisa'i, Al-Tirmizi. All these scientists are from Uzbekistan itself. So you can see the culture, you can see the essence of the Islamic culture over there. Despite the long years of non-practice of the Islamic religion because of the communism. So there is a lot of affinity between us and them. Nowadays, or immediately after the independence, the first visits and tours by the late President Islam Karimov of Uzbekistan, immediately after Russia, it was to Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Egypt. That was in 1992. So they are keen very much to have good relations and economic and trade and cultural and educational relation with Egypt especially and with the Arab and Muslim world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Masoud, the first leg and the first stop of the President's tour was to Bahrain. And you mentioned the importance of this visit in order to really coordinate and strengthen the relationship between Egypt and Bahrain in light of the Iranian and expansion of the Iranian influence in the region. What do you expect, what were the topics do you feel were probably discussed in this meeting, and what are the next steps to coordinate and strengthen the relationship and try to deal with the expansion of the Iranian influence?
Well, first of all, the most important topic that was discussed there is fighting terrorism, for sure, which was very clear about all these discussions with the head of the Egyptian intelligence, with their partners there in Bahrain. Regarding the Iranian issue, well, this is a very deep issue. It's not gonna be discussed only in one or couple of days. For sure, we know that United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt are really doing a very good job dealing with these issues and this file actually, and regarding the Iranian expansion in the region. So these actually we expect that, and these the main issue that were in the agenda of President Sisi there, and I believe that since Egypt started to coordinate deeply with other Arab countries to actually face the Iranian expansion there, this is actually, we have a strategic plan to deal with it. It is not about only for 1 or 2 days visit. No, it is long run process. It's going to take time, and I believe we are doing a very good job in this, coordinating with our brothers in other Gulf countries.
Yes. Well, Ambassador Taha, now the second leg took the President to Beijing, to China, attending the forum of the Africa-China cooperation. Now, this forum has been going on for a few years, and this is the forum that has been hosted by China with more than 52 leaders of Arab and African states trying to coordinate and strengthen the relationship, whether politically or mainly economically. The significance and the importance of this forum in specific in light of the economic developments that are taking place with China in light of the American trade war and the tariffs on the aluminum and steel, and really trying to deal with protectionism that is being imposed by the US administration. How do you see the importance and the level of cooperation between China and the African states?
Well, China is in Africa, say, at least 20 years ago or 15 years ago. They are there already. They have their own means to be successful in trade and economic cooperation with Africa and in other spheres of cooperation. They entered the African continent with good intention, without any preconditions, without any political implications. So they are well accepted over there. They sometimes start intelligently with some charity works or helping the other African countries in building, for example, schools, hospitals, parliaments, even for free, as a start. Then they deal with them genuinely and with no other intentions or objectives, and they sometimes grant them some scholarships and some loans with low interest rates. So they are very much accepted over there and well reputed. China now is having about 150 to 170 $billion trade with Africa. It has about $600 million investment over there, and it is to be increased. China also is have some political and security contacts with some African countries in training and supporting them in different international organizations, especially the Security Council. Egypt is a pillar among the African countries in cooperating with China. We are a big country with a long history, and China knows that. We are a very big market of 100 million people to China. You have resources also. You are the gate to the African market, because we are members to COMESA with all its free customs, trade and communication with some other countries. We can have joint or trilateral projects together, whether in Egypt, to be exported to the African countries, or inside the African countries itself. So we can benefit as Egypt from China relationship and cooperation and trade with Africa, and vice versa.
Yes. Well, Dr. Masoud, now a lot of political and economic analysts are looking at China as really the biggest sort of potential for economic cooperation. Now, Egypt, along with other African states, we are strengthening and working on economic and trade cooperation with the US, with the European countries, and Asian countries as well. However, people are looking at China and as the second biggest economy in the world, along with many Asian countries with huge economic potential, as the biggest sort of potential in the whole world, because of all the competition that's going on between China and the US administration, also with the serious sort of initiatives that are being taken by China, mainly the Silk and Belt Road. Now, do you feel that this is the biggest potential for Egypt as well in terms of economic cooperation?
Yes, in terms of economic potential regarding to what benefit Egypt, for sure. Well, our actually foreign policy is oriented mainly or almost to benefit our country. So first of all, let us look at any relation between two countries. You have to win-win situation. You cannot benefit from China and China does not benefit from you. So let us analyze it in a very simple way. What we really need from China and what China really needs from us, and how can make this happen. So we win-win situation, but in order to win both, we really need to have the infrastructure for this winning and this playground in order to win. First, what Egypt really needs from China. Well, when Egypt looked in terms of political, in terms of international politics, yes, Egypt needs China very well in terms that China is a permanent member in the Security Council. So we really need its voice. We need to stand in our issues in the Security Council, not only in our issues, but also our Arabian countries and our Arabian brothers in there.
Yes.
So this is what we need. We need also from China, and this is what we actually need from them in terms of economic relation. In terms of economic relation, in terms of trade, actually, China is going to gain more than us. Why? Because if you look at the volume of trade between Egypt and China, it is around $10.8 billion. While we export to China only 408 million, and the rest of this 10.8 is we import from China to Egypt. And honestly, at this stage of development in Egypt, we cannot compete with China in order to have. But what we benefit more in terms of investment. As Mr. Ambassador told us just a few seconds ago, that the Egyptian and Chinese relation is very deep. It goes back in the history in 1956. But guess what? When you talk about the Chinese investment in Africa, you are talking about $110 billion investment from China into African countries at the end of 2017. This is the numbers at the end of 2017. Guess what? The only share of Egypt that has from this 110 is $5 billion only. So still a lots of potential to go. Okay, so we need another issue also from China. We need technology transfer. In order to develop your country, no way to develop your country unless you have your own technology as well.
Yes.
For sure, you will have one way to transfer technology. Also, you can do it from China and benefit from a Chinese experiences themselves in improving their own technology and also transferring technology from other countries. Lots of experience in China regarding this issue.
Yes.
Also, Chinese. What they need from us in regarding all of this economic. Yes, they also look at, like Mr. Ambassador told us in a few seconds, also they look at Egypt is a very big market. Regarding looking at Egypt as a gate for Africa, I liked actually your wording when you said, yes, the already there since 20 years ago. So also they are not only in terms of politics or going to African nations need to coordinate with Egypt. No, they don't need that. What they need, that Egypt actually has lots of potential in terms of logistics, in terms of infrastructure for big industries, that Chinese industries actually. And for this reason we have this Chinese industry zone in Suez, and now we have it in new area in Suez Canal area also zone as well, and we expect that during until 2020 until the year 2020, we expect actually $3 billion are going to be invested in this area, only creating a job or around 20,000 job opportunities for young Egyptians here. We don't forget also scholarships. Chinese actually during only 2017 only, the Chinese provided 20,000 scholarship opportunity. So, you know, to what extent actually this is the soft power, and this is how to actually you have you put your feet in Africa. So China look at Africa also, and Egypt. We have lots of natural resource in terms of energy. We start moving the Chinese technology as like we are talking about huge electricity station that generating electricity user coal actually in Egypt, and we are going to use the Chinese experience and the Chinese technology in that, and I believe I guess, I'm not sure, but I guess that we have our own strategy in order to transfer this technology.
Yes, definitely. Well, Mr. Ambassador, now, as you've mentioned, the relationship between China and the African states is mainly based on partnership. And it was reiterated numerous times in this forum, even by the Chinese president, saying that the relationship is not based on any international interference in the internal affairs of other states, which is very much appreciated by the African continent. Now, the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, pledged $60 billion in development for Africa. And during the forum, the President Al-Sisi and his delegation signed agreements of cooperation worth about $18.3 billion of investments between both countries. Now, we all know the economic industrial zone in the Suez Canal that should be developed, and China should be a big part of that zone. What are other investment opportunities and potential projects that can take place between Egypt and China in a way that would balance the trade and cooperation between both countries, instead of just exporting very little and receiving a lot more? How can we even benefit much more from the Chinese and Egyptian cooperation?
Well, as Professor Masoud said, they have the technology and they have the manpower also, and it is relatively cheap manpower. We need this technology in our projects especially, and mega projects which we are going through those years. They can help in petrochemical industries. They can help in construction projects everywhere in Egypt. They can help in transportation and roads. All these are projects and are included in the $18 billion Chinese investments, which it would be taking place there within the next 5 years or so. They can help us also in the field of establishing medium and small enterprises. And we can benefit from their experience in this regard, because, as you know, China have started years ago as a poor country, and they started by establishing and giving special attention to medium and small enterprises for the farmers and for the laborers. And they jumped from that to mega projects and to this economic progress. We have a lot to benefit from China, and again, we can also benefit from them in hospitals and schools and building sector. All these things can be dealt with between Egypt and China. The other thing is, as I mentioned before, we can have some joint projects between Egypt, China, and to be transferred to a third country in Africa. So Egypt can be a hub for these, and we can have some added values to the raw materials or to the Chinese expertise, and we can benefit from our free trade and exemptions through the COMESA community or other communities in the African continent.
But that's how we can benefit from the relationship with China. What about them? How can they benefit from the relationship with Egypt? Is Egypt mainly a gateway to the African continent, or do they want other things as well? Is it far-fetched that Egypt can actually establish projects and investment over there in China? How can they benefit from the relationship?
No, it's not far-fetched, but they are saturated over there, and they can benefit in the meantime while they are establishing investments here. They gain money back from these investments. They have some projects in roads and transportation, in the industrial area, in the Suez Canal. They build and participate with us in establishing these projects, and they gain money out of their investment. So they can benefit. They can, as I said, they can benefit from us as a gate. Although they are there in Africa, and they have their own relationship, bilateral relations with a lot of African countries. They have also bilateral agreements and sometimes bilateral exemptions also. But still, Egypt can be a hub for establishing joint or trilateral projects between Egypt, China, and some other third party in Africa.
Definitely. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, let's check out this report regarding the FOCAC in Beijing, the Forum on Chinese African cooperation, and we'll be right back.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi attended in Beijing on Tuesday a summit of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation, which aims to build a closer China-Africa community with a shared future, further dovetail China's Belt and Road Initiative with African development, setting a new path for a higher level of China-Africa cooperation. The forum officially kicked off on Tuesday through to Wednesday. This year's edition is themed China and Africa towards an ever-stronger community with a shared future through win-win cooperation. Established 18 years ago, the summit has achieved fruitful results and has become a significant mark of China-Africa cooperation. China-Africa trade volume has amounted to $170 billion in 2017, up from just over $10 billion in 2000. In the near future, China-funded industrial parks will cover the entire industrial system. Chinese tech companies will set up numerous development bases in Africa. Dozens of jointly built agricultural demonstration centers will also bring huge historical changes to Africa's agricultural industry. More concrete projects are expected to come into being during the upcoming series of events, including the high-level dialogue of China-Africa leaders and business representatives and the 6th China-Africa Business Forum. The summit has now become a regular summit between Africa and China, and are big projects coming out of this partnership within the summit. So far, nearly 10 African countries have signed the Belt and Road Cooperation agreements with China, and a few more are in negotiations.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Dr. Masoud, there's always the talk, whenever we talk about China and the African continent, there's always talk about the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, we've been talking about this project and this initiative for many years now. When do you feel that this maritime sort of Silk Road between China and Asia and the Eastern African coast will be a reality? And what are the sort of obstacles that are making it take so much time?
Well, actually, lots of, as you said, it's a project and it's an initiative. It has been thought of many years ago, and now actually all countries actually in this concerned with this initiative start to some extent to present or have some infrastructure for that. For instance, when Egypt actually bought lots of infrastructure in Suez Canal area, as well as to be a logistics center, is really gonna be a part of this, or gonna be served as a part of this this initiative. Yes, it is. It's gonna take long time. It is not about one or couple of years to done with it.
Yes.
Many countries are actually involved. It needs lots of infrastructure. It needs lots of creation of logistics areas. But I believe as Egypt, we are doing our part in a very well way.
Yes.
In a very good way.
Yes. Now, Your Excellency, I want to turn the attention to the visit to Uzbekistan, the first official visit by the President to Uzbekistan upon the invitation of President Mirziyoyev. Now, you explained how there is a very special and strong bond between Uzbekistan and the Central Asian countries with the Arab and the Islamic world. Why did it take, first of all, such a long time for an official state visit to take place?
Well, a lot of factors from our side and from their side also. First of all, the Central Asian countries, including Uzbekistan, they were very much attached to Russia and the Soviet Union era, whether psychologically or economically. Because the most of the infrastructure of their projects, electricity, water, and agriculture, everything was attached to the ex-Soviet Union. Culturally also they were attached very much to this culture of the Russian people, the language, and different fields of life. They were a little bit isolated. All of them, all the 5 countries are landlocked. So the exchange of trade with the outside world was a little bit difficult for them, apart from inter-trade between each other and between them and Turkey and Iran and China and Russia. These are the neighborhood of the Central Asian countries. Trade is difficult a little bit, even up till now, because of this geographical obstacle and the high cost of transportation. But our relation with them politically, it started well since the independence of Uzbekistan in 1991. We had a visit of our the then ex-minister of Cooperation, Dr. Kamal Ganzouri, in 1992, along with an Egyptian delegation to sign a lot of agreements and agreement of strategic cooperation between them and agreement on establishing diplomatic relations. 2 years later, we established our embassy over there in 1993, and in 1995 they have established their embassy, opened their embassy here. There were a shuttle of some ministerial visits between the 2 countries, but the credit goes to them regarding the presidential visits. the late President Islam Karimov has visited, as I said, Egypt in 1992, and again in 2007 he has been here. We haven't been there. I mean, our presidents haven't been there since then. But we tried very much to boost the economic and trade relations, but as I said, it was a bit difficult. Now we can overcome these obstacles in establishing, for example, trade exhibitions over there or here every now and then. We can trade in some light agricultural products, some medicine, some other non-costing goods and materials. The main factor which we can benefit a lot from it is tourism. We have to push to promote tourism between us and Uzbekistan. Those people are very keen to come to us, and but we tried, and we have established an airline between Egypt, Cairo, and Tashkent 2 times, and then stopped again. So the monopoly now is for Turkish Airways. It's a far distance between Cairo through Istanbul and Tashkent. It takes almost 5.5 hours. If we have a direct flight between Cairo and Tashkent, it will take only 3.5 hours. Yes, maximum.
Well, Your Excellency, you mentioned that we are trying to establish these steps, economic cooperation steps, talking about exhibitions, talking about light sort of cooperation in different fields. But do you feel that this visit is, because a lot of people are saying this is not only an economic sort of visit, there's also a very important political angle to this visit. And you've mentioned that Uzbekistan has been mainly really having relations with countries such as Iran, such as Turkey. Now, do you feel that there is a political aspect for this visit between Egypt and Uzbekistan, other than the trade and economic cooperation?
I think we are going parallelly in different aspects of cooperation. The political one is very important because Uzbekistan has a lot of good relations between neighboring countries and big countries like Russia and Turkey and Iran. The trade and economic factor is very important. Though we have another field of cooperation which is so important to us, the field of cotton research and agricultural products processing, the field of medicine. We can benefit from them in this regard. The education side, for example, we had and we're still having a cultural center over there, but I think it's closed right now. This Egyptian Cultural Center, which was attached to the Egyptian embassy over there, was educating Uzbek students, about 1,000 students a year, teaching them Arabic language and religion and some other sciences also. So culturally we can also benefit from each other. But as you said, Uzbekistan is now it's opening up to the outside world more than before. President Shavkat Mirziyoyev is now taking the path of Kazakhstan, neighboring Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has opened to the outside world since, say, 15 to 20 years. So he's now changing the current and opening up to tourism and to foreign investors.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Ambassador actually mentioned, there will be a lot of agreements and cooperation in the fields of culture, tourism, education, and even sports between Egypt and Uzbekistan. And hopefully this three-legged Asian tour will be fruitful and beneficial for Egypt and all the respective countries. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank very much Mr. Ambassador Farghaly Taha, the former Assistant Foreign Minister and former Deputy Head of the mission to Uzbekistan. I'd also like to thank very much Dr. Ali Masoud, the Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Political Science at Beni Suef University. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, let's check out this report regarding the presidency's activities over the past few days. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.